Hi and welcome back to another video. Today I'll be talking about the different ways that I go about dealing with situations of fear and panic in my life. Since an early age, I remember having experienced anxiety and panic, which are two things that I've lived with for many years and that have taken a long time for me to come to terms with. I want to start off by saying that I don't believe in a quick fix to instantly overcome anxiety, which is something that takes time and patience to improve. Over the years, however, I have found some practical and effective ways of dealing with stress and fear. The first method that I use is to become aware of and to direct my attention towards my fear whenever I begin to feel fearful or anxious. I find that doing this helps me to move away from a position of being fearful and unsettled towards consciously facing my fear, which actually helps me to restore some control over the situation. Eventually, when I've gone through it and the fear subsides, I find that I'm left with an opportunity to reflect on the reasons why a particular situation has caused me to be fearful in the first place. I find that doing this helps me to better understand the cause of my fear, which tends to lessen its intensity. Having said that, there are also situations where fear can turn into panic, in which case it may be much more difficult to rationalize through one's feelings, as during a panic attack, for example, perception can be warped and negatively affected. Whenever I find myself in such a situation, I find one of the best things I can do is to avoid getting carried away by my panic by focusing my attention on my breath while waiting for my anxiety to blow over, which it eventually always does. This brings me to the next way of dealing with fear, which is to focus on deep breathing. In one of my recent videos, I have explained in detail the technique of square breathing. Equally as beneficial can be taking slow and deep breaths at a steady pace, which is also effective for managing fear and stress. Doing this also helps to focus on something else rather than the cause of the fear itself, preventing the mind from getting carried away into states of hopelessness or confusion. Another good mindset to have, which helps to deal with fear, is to recognize and to accept that there will be ups and downs in life, and that every time that things change, for better or for worse, that it presents a good opportunity to learn from it. For example, if I were to run into an unexpected difficulty that would cause fear and stress, I would use all the methods step by step, starting off by rationally accepting the fact that I would be feeling fearful. I would then go about managing my levels of fear through deep breathing, and finally would move to actively finding ways of improving or resolving the situation. This brings me to the next way of dealing with fear, and that is to be proactive. I find that whenever I'm feeling fearful, that it can be easy to be overcome by it. This is something that I find important to work on because I've noticed that passivity tends to worsen my fear. For example, instead of sitting in a place and letting myself being overwhelmed by fear, I find it helpful to take a break, using that opportunity to take a walk and be physically active before returning to a situation. Of course, if one can, the very best thing that can be done to counter fear is all-out exercise, which is another great way of dealing with fear. This can be in the form of jogging, doing bodyweight exercises, or playing a sport, which really helps to forcefully break out from the pattern of fearfulness and anxiety. And the more strenuous the exercise, the better, as tiring oneself out is a great way to transform negative emotions like fear by focusing one's adrenaline on a physically challenging activity. Having said that, there may be times when anxiety and panic can take their toll on our motivation and can become difficult to break free from, in which case it's also important to consider seeking out guidance from a professional such as a counselor or psychologist who may be able to provide valuable insights that could fast-track one's recovery. If you happen to know someone who might be struggling with anxiety and fear, please remember that understanding and kindness is a great way of showing care and support. This brings me to the end of this video. Next time, I will be talking about ways of reversing self-harming behavior and how to go about building a positive mindset as a way of dealing with anxiety. Until then, thank you for watching and see you next time.